Hey everyone, welcome again to another episode of Disability Landscape. I'm your host, Charlie Brose. With me as usual, my co-host, Mark Knutson. Mark, who do we have today?
Today I want to introduce you to Todd Grugel, who is ADA Program Manager for MNDOT, Minnesota Department of Transportation. And welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Now, I guess, to start off, you created a video that was for the ADA celebration, and we want to, we're going to show that video. Anything you want to talk about before we start the video?
Yeah, the Minnesota Council of Disability put on a 31st anniversary celebration, so they asked us to showcase some of the work we were doing at the Minnesota Department of Transportation. I thought it was a really good opportunity. We've been doing a lot of great things over the last 11 years since our unit was created, and it just kind of gives you the highlight of what we do, A through Z, delivering accessible sidewalks and curb ramps and pedestrian signals throughout Minnesota.
Okay, let's take a look at that video.
Great. Hi, I'm Todd Grugel, the MNDOT ADA Program Engineer. I was born and raised in Moorhead, Minnesota, and went to school at North Dakota State University in civil engineering. In 1997, I started working with MNDOT in the bridge office designing bridges. After that, I had various roles in construction, water resources, maintenance, but that's not the whole story. In 1998, I was out inspecting that bridge I just designed, and the contractor was cutting off the bridge piling that supports bridges, cutting off the excess, and I was over measuring about 24 feet away, and there was this 25-foot steel piling that fell like a tree, 850 pounds on my shoulder, and it sheared my back at the T11 vertebrae, leaving me permanently in a wheelchair, basically with a spinal cord injury. But I guess you do what you do. You don't expect it, but you move on as best you can. And in 2010, the commissioner asked me to head up the ADA engineering unit to try to make our right-of-ways more accessible for folks with disabilities. For the next few minutes, I'd like to tell you about the excellent work our unit has been doing to do just that. A big part of our program is conducting field walks, where we go out in the field and assess the actual conditions and see if there's any accessibility barriers. And so we're out here, we take a lot of measurements and just basically make sure our slopes are working and what our existing conditions are. And we're doing this today on North Olson Memorial Highway in North Minneapolis. And basically we have a complaint from a resident because the accessibility at this quadrant is actually really poor. And we have a project coming in 5 years, but we just can't wait that long. So our unit takes the lead in developing some of those quick projects that are responsive to those complaints. So today I'm with the ADA unit. Joe Zilka and I lead that effort, and we have 3 consultants with us today that help us a lot. And doing that kind of request project. But normally we are with the districts doing, they deliver all the construction projects. So we do about 80 field walks a year throughout the state, and which is a large part of, like I said, a large workload. If you can look at these graphics, you can see we're going to do about 80 a year. So over a 6-year period of that, we have 500 active projects between field walks, scoping, design, and plan reviews, which is a big part of our work. We review over 350 plans each year for those projects at different stages. We also look at the geometric layout reviews and permit and plat reviews and city and state aid reviews. We have a lot of project meetings that go along with that, and we field a lot of questions for all of those 500 projects that we have. So I think that's good for this corner. We're going to get at it and get to work and improve some accessibility. So what are you guys finding out here for Crossville? We're on a construction site today in Crosby, Minnesota, where part of our team, Dustin Walls, is watching the inspection of a pour. And this is actually where it's very important that we're out here, because this is the long-lasting product. A lot of work has gone into this project at this point, design and project development, but it really matters that what hits the ground here is going to last for the next 20 or more years. So we need to get it right. And we have Harvey Unruh behind the camera today, who actually works with Dustin doing construction support. And that's kind of all of where our unit goes, A to Z, even on the filming today. What goes into construction is, a lot of checking forms, checking grades, but also we're working with, we help develop the standard plans, the special provisions, contractor pay items, to make sure it all comes together. We also train over 1,500 contracts through our certification program, as well as consultants and MNDOT city and county staff. I actually do design training as well. We've trained over 1,000 designers in the last 4 years. So you can see this is where it really hits the ground, and this is where it really matters that our unit, along with the districts and the project teams, are making sure it's a successful product. We're still in Crosby, and we've talked curb ramps, making them accessible, but I wanted to show you sidewalks as well, because that is so important. We were able to make a flat sidewalk par here, so I'm not fighting cross slope, and we use variable slopes in our roadway and boulevard and our curb line to actually match these alcoves so I can go right in and out of any business, so that's great. And again, along with the no cross slope, these joints are all saw cut, so there's really no bumps or really very little resistance. So this is great. I'm ready to go see what else Crosby's got to offer. I'm in Lake City, where we had a reconstruct project last year with a lot of nice features, but this is a particularly busy signalized intersection with 2 trunk highways, so there's always challenges making everything meet with turning movements. But we did it fairly well here with this curb ramp. It's a depressed corner because we had a small area so that we couldn't have 2 individual ramps, but we were able to actually match into this doorway, which is good, so we have access into the building. And to accomplish this, we raised the flow line, so we moved the drainage to either side. So there's a lot of engineering that goes into a corner like this, but finally we actually had APS push buttons as well, which is standard for what we do. We hit the signal, and it's audible cues that give individual who might be blind or low vision the exact same cues that sighted individuals have. And now I can safely cross the intersection. I'd like to talk to you about the project we had in Glenwood, Minnesota. With the downtown reconstruct, we had a fairly wide corridor, so we were able to add some multimodal facilities. You can see I just wheeled up the sidewalk portion, but we also have a green space or amenity zone between, and then finally on the outside near the back of curb, we have a separated bike lane. This project did a good job of separating the modes between bike and ped, and also this amenity boulevard actually allowed us to match into the doorways better, where we made up some elevations. But I'd like to show you some challenges we had at the corner. So I'm at the intersection, and before I talked, there was good separation back in the amenity space. But as you get to the intersection, you lose that amenity, and the 2 modes need to come together into this single curb ramp. So there's mixing in that sense, but also there's this sidewalk par from the side street coming in, and there's mixing here as well. So it's kind of a conflict point for those 2 or 3 or 4 different modes and paths of travel, which always is a challenge for any users, but can be an extra challenge for individuals who are blind. So here we are in Duluth, and everyone always wonders, how do you make ADA work in Duluth? And yeah, it's challenging. We've got a 6 to 8% grade going up Mesaba Avenue, and all your sidewalks are just going to match that. But you can do a lot at the intersections to make them accessible. For example, at the medians, we elongated the median crossings and built traverses, basically flattening out the slope with the longer run, and made them accessible. And once we did that, we were able to actually install a pedestrian crossing at the signal itself. There never was one here before, and that was a shame because there's a lot of ped traffic that had to play Frogger just going through the intersection to get to this Bethel Social Service Agency. Again, a lot of pedestrian traffic, so ADA helped the overall pedestrian network as well. And this corner in particular is very challenging. There's 8 steps, so that's a lot of grade to manage. There was always 8 steps here before. It was a true barrier to get into West Duluth. But take a look at what we did at this switchback to make sure it was accessible. Let's see how it works. In this intersection, this quadrant in particular, took a lot of engineering, a lot of surveys and design and looking at alternates, but we got everything to meet standards. We've got less than an 8% slope here, handrails on both sides. As I come down, there's a landing for every 30 inches of vertical rise, and this landing also gives us access to the Bethel. So that's great. 2 birds with 1 stone. And we're off MnDOT right away now, so we used a partnership with them to improve their access as well as maintain or create access for us. So as I come down to this next landing, we will need to traverse back down on top of an existing retaining wall. But this whole quadrant, we made up, again, those 8 steps. Used to be a barrier coming into Duluth, but now it is completely accessible. So I take a lot of satisfaction out of this, and I enjoy the challenges. And really, that's what it takes to be good at ADA. You have to want to improve things and like a challenge. So this corner was a very good example of that. We're on Snelling Avenue in St. Paul, where we did a project in 2015 that was a mill and overlay project. That's the majority of what MnDOT does, is preservation projects. So it was required that we actually complete the curb ramp. That's a federal requirement that all agencies have to do on mill and overlay projects. But we took the extra step to actually do all of the sidewalks and all of the pedestrian facilities in the ADA transition plan, the driveways, the crosswalks, the APS. So I'd like to show you some before and after slides and tell you more about this project. It's kind of the main street of Minnesota. It connects downtown, 94 St. Paul kind of comes through here up to the State Fair grounds of Minnesota. And it was a really successful project for us. Showed we didn't have to have an urban reconstruct to do all of our sidewalks. Because as an agency, if we were waiting for those urban reconstructs, and if we waited that long, it would have taken us 100 years to complete our transition plan on our sidewalks. That just wasn't deemed reasonable by us as an agency. So we made the commitment to do all that in 20 years and to do a lot of it on preservation type projects. And that was a huge commitment from our agency. But from a user perspective, 20 years may actually seem still like a long time, but we've really taken a big leap, and we should expect other agencies to do that as well, because every agency has to do their curb ramps, but the sidewalks are more of a longer time frame, a less determined time frame. So what MnDOT did was really control our liability so we can actually quickly complete our transition plan or more expediently, but also it's doing the right thing, making sure it's usable for all, the sidewalks are usable for all users. So I feel proud that we did that, and it was a big commitment, and our unit's taking the lead in delivering those sidewalks with $10 million a year of funding. Looking back over the last 11 years since the ADA unit was first created, I guess you can say the ADA unit story has become my story. Circumstances brought me to this position that I never really thought I'd be a member of, but it's allowed me to turn obstacles into opportunities and really make a difference in people's everyday lives. We have a very small but very dedicated unit at ADA unit at MnDOT, where, but I will say we are national leaders in roadside pedestrian infrastructure. We make significant improvements in people's lives and allow them to engage into their community. And I'm proud to be a member of this ADA unit, and I'm proud to lead it into the future and continue making those same improvements. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to share my story with you today, and I hope it's inspired you and informed you to engage with your public officials and expect these same accessibility improvements no matter where you live, in which community across the state of Minnesota or across the country. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
that was really interesting. Charlie, I guess since I've been doing some of the talking, it's only fair to let you also get involved here, sir.
Yeah, that's only because Mark failed to watch the video.
Thank you, Charlie.
There you go.
And he deserved every minute. Todd, that was a great video. It looks like one of the more challenging projects was that Duluth interchange, because you have inclines in Duluth that are just ridiculous. And so tell us, how long did it take to kind of come up with the concept that you did for Duluth there?
Yeah, certainly that was probably the hardest corner we've ever done, to be honest. And there was a lot of insurmountable grades, and I was challenged by the survey and right-of-way manager up there, and he said, if you can figure out this corner, you'll really be doing something. So I had some extra impetus behind it, but
Is that when you got the raw meat on? Okay, come on, bring it on.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the story for that one is kind of interesting. I mean, I was just sitting in my office late one night and working through the whole plan set. We did many other intersections and quadrants on that job, but that was the challenging one. And I was just looking at a Google image and just saw how a existing retaining wall laid in there, kind of in the switchback form. So I just had the right view from Google kind of late in the evening and said, hey, this could be a concept, and just started fleshing it out from there. And that was the concept, and then it was a lot of detailed analysis after that, surveying and design.
Right, because you have the staircase there that helps more able-bodied people get up to that next level. So you created a switchback ramp to help them get down to that level.
Exactly. Yeah, the staircase was always there, but in Duluth and West, that was the last segment that was inaccessible to get to West Duluth. The sidewalk pretty much ended there for folks in wheelchairs.
Okay.
So it had a lot of extra meaning for me to mitigate that barrier. Yeah.
So, and there was enough feasible space to create the ramp and everything in there.
Well, and that's where it did get interesting, because we are often constrained by our right-of-way, our what we own for property.
Right.
And that one we did actually go off the right-of-way, so we knew to make it feasible, we had to work with the Bethel, the property owner there.
Okay.
So we had a partnership with them, and it was pretty much a win-win, because it improved access to their facility as well as through the public right-of-way. And with that switchback, we added a pedestrian phase to the signal where there hadn't been one before, because it was inaccessible.
Sure.
So actually, for all pedestrians, it was kind of the win-win-win, I guess.
Okay. That's probably one of the more challenging ones. You've been all around the state working on different projects, is that correct?
Certainly, yeah. We at MNDOT, we deliver anywhere from 80 to 100 projects a year that have accessibility.
Wow.
We primarily do it on a lot of our mill and overlay projects, but also some reconstruct projects and some standalone ones. But yeah, 80 to 100 projects a year, and we start working 6 years out on those. We start scoping them.
Wow.
So yeah, so you're scoping them, and then you're doing layouts, and then you're doing detailed design reviews, usually 2 and 3 years out, and then goes to letting, and you're in construction. So those 6 years of projects of 80 to 100, we actively manage over 500 projects at any time.
And these projects come along then when they're drafting like new intersections along an entryway, a state highway or something to that effect. One thing's puzzled me for a long time.
Sure.
Is the metal grates that they put into the curb ramps.
Yes.
Is there a rhyme or reason to those? Because if you're in a wheelchair, it's like...
Yeah, no, there certainly is. They're what we call detectable warning surfaces, or slang truncated domes. But they are cast iron metal plates in Minnesota, and really their purpose is for users who are blind or low vision, so they know where the sidewalk ends and where you're entering into the roadway.
Okay.
Yeah. So before we started doing curb cuts for wheelchair users, it was fine. They could come up and either their guide dog would stop or they'd hit their curb. But now we put the curb cuts in. They take the place of where the curb line used to be.
Right.
So giving the cues to all users.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thing I'm curious about, because like you said on that one project for Duluth, you were sitting at your desk, but I would assume your job is not just sitting in the office.
No.
And that's what got my curiosity when I was told about you, because I was told that you go out to the actual project sites and you are in a wheelchair,
Yes.
and just getting curbs and sidewalks accessible is enough. I can't even imagine going out to a project site
Right.
where they have accessible.
Right.
So, how do you deal with that? That's what I'm really curious about.
I mean, it is challenging, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
And, just getting around a construction project, we are doing better at making accessible improvements, even temporarily for projects for all users, just to get to businesses and stuff. But, when they're doing the biggest of the grading, I'm usually, that's not really where our work is. Usually when we're putting it back in there, so the curbs are going in and and the sidewalks. So there is a little more chance to get around when that's happening. I spend a lot of my time on the front end of projects. Actually, I supervise the construction and the design.
The details.
Yeah, and actually the field walk. That's where we created that at MNDOT, and it's going out there and assessing the situation. Just going down the street, taking measurements before the project, and making recommendations saying this barrier needs to be fixed, this slope is too steep, or this is a drainage problem. And so it's not only identifying the problems, but also how to fix them. So really that's the creative part that I see is what's the vision of this corridor? What can we do with the scope of the project to make the most improvements we can?
Okay.
So, but yeah, I do supervise the other areas, and even some of my previous jobs at MNDOT, I was the hydraulics engineer, and that was my first job after I was recovering from my injury. And there I had, as far as getting on the sites, they got me a 4-wheel drive pickup and they
did,
and a lift with a 4-wheeler with a lift that came out of the back of the truck, and I transferred onto the 4-wheeler, and I went and I was checking drainage areas and was actually a construction supervisor at that time. And when we were on,
you actually got paid. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, exactly. And when we were on strike, I was out there because our inspectors weren't even there, so I was the only person on the job taking tickets with the contractors on my 4-wheeler.
Oh, gosh.
So we do definitely get out in the field.
Okay.
You do get out there and get dirty.
Yeah, there you go. In part of the video, you guys change grades and such to accommodate wheelchairs, make it a little easier.
Yes.
There's a gentleman in one of the pieces, I think it was the Olson Memorial Highway, where he's got the 4-foot level.
Yes.
That he's doing. Is that checking grade? Is that to verify the heights? How does that function help?
Yeah, that's a smart level. It's just like a standard carpenter's level with a bubble, but this one has an automatic readout on it, so you can see the percents.
Oh, okay.
So we know really what our grades are. You're supposed to have 8.3% max running slope on a ramp, which is 1 inch vertical over 12 inches horizontal.
Yep.
And 2% cross slope of the sidewalk. So as we're using wheelchairs, we're not steering off into the gutter.
Okay.
I've been in enough of those.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're checking all of those grades to say, where are the deficiencies, and then if there are deficiencies, how do we improve them? And we raise the road and everything. But it's not always that easy because you have to maintain the drainage and things because you can't create a big puddle and everything has to come together.
Yeah. And then because of both Charlie and I being wheelchair users, we're a keen looking, for the ramps.
For sure.
And that, but what are some of the other accessibility things out there that we may not observe, like for visually impaired or for the hard of hearing and that?
Yeah. For folks who might be visually impaired, we have accessible signals, APS, accessible pedestrian signals.
Okay.
And those are, if a sighted individual comes up, you hit the button and you can see the numbers counting down.
Right. Okay.
But for these, the accessible signals are audible. So they tell you when the walk cycle is on, when it's time to cross the street. There's also a vibrotactile cue to those, where the button vibrates.
Sure.
So folks that are deaf blind can get that same cue that the walk signal is on, and when it starts to vibrate, they have their hands on the button.
Oh, no, that I did not.
And they cross there. So there's quite a bit of technology on the signal side of things that we're doing to make accessible. And MNDOT is doing exceptionally well on that. We are for sure national leaders because we have over 75% of the signals on our system have APS, which is huge. no other agency is even close to that.
Oh, really?
Across the country. Because I do present at national seminars and forums, and I present our program. And when we just talk about how everyone else is doing, and there's really no one that compares with accessible signals, but also the curb ramps are required as part of the law when you're doing an overlay.
Sure.
But the sidewalks are more of an indeterminate time frame.
Yeah.
So we've made a commitment at MNDOT to fix all of our sidewalks in 20 years. Wow. And that doesn't sound like it sounds like a long time.
Right.
But that is, earth shattering. It's warp speed for many agencies, because they're not touching them even at all. They're waiting for reconstruct projects.
Oh.
And if you were to wait, we were at our program was, if we were waiting for reconstructs to fix our sidewalks, it would have taken us 100 years.
Yeah.
So we've backed that down to 20.
20.
That's
more than aggressive.
Yeah.
So the only thing with the timers on the thing is when it's doing the countdown verbally. When it gets to like 5, it should say, "Hurry up, run!"
Right.
or move however
exactly.
you move.
Yeah.
Yes.
Move quicker. There's cars coming.
Yes.
I think we need to start wrapping up, but the video is great. It shows a diverse job you guys are doing out there. And, given your time frame, much luck to you.
Yes.
It sounds like it's going to be a challenge. Mark?
Yeah, all I can say is, whenever you have free time, we can go on an ATV ride.
There you go. Gladly. We're ready to go hunting here in a couple weeks. So we're getting the four-wheeler out.
Great. But no, it was great. It was great to hear. Like I said, I just learned something. Obviously you could hear the signal being counted down, but I didn't even know about the button vibrating. So that was interesting to hear in that. So. Yeah,
I think it's a huge piece. I mean, if we can educate our users, our community as much as we can, they'll learn to expect more. And I think that's important that we do. The disabled community does expect more. I mean, it seems like we've been conditioned to accept, a poorer system, but it can be much better. So keep that importance and that engagement with all the local community members.
Well, great. No, it was good. I'm glad we were able to get together. I'm glad we were able to come into the studio.
Yeah.
And it was great watching the video.
Certainly.
So.
All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
Mark, I want to thank our guest, Todd Grugel.
Yeah, Grugel. Yeah.
Grugel. Google with the R.
That's it.
And my co-host, Mark Knutson. This has been Disability Landscape. We'll see you next time.